Good morning. It is such a bright and beautiful day to uncover some fantastic rock history.
Did you know that Paul McCartney is getting a brand new exhibit at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum?
Yes, it coincides nicely with the new documentary called Man on the Run. Let's get into that.
So if you're sketching out your summer road trips for 2026, you definitely need to put a big red circle right around Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, absolutely. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is making a huge transition.
They are. Come May 15th, they are taking the wraps off a massive new exhibition. It's called Paul McCartney and Wings.
And this is not just, a small side room. This is a total takeover.
Exactly. Just to give you an idea of the real estate here, they're completely clearing out the main hall.
The exact same space that the Bon Jovi Forever exhibit occupied for the past 2 years.
Yeah, so my apologies to John Bon Jovi, but the original landlord is moving in.
It is quite the shift in tone.
It's massive. But what caught my eye when looking at the announcement wasn't just the sheer size. It's the specific focus.
Because it is not a Beatles exhibit.
No, not at all. It is strictly focusing on the Wings era. We're talking 1970 through 1981.
And honestly, it is about damn time.
You feel like it's long overdue.
Completely overdue. If you look at how the big rock institutions normally handle this era, Wings has basically been treated as the awkward stepchild of rock history.
Like they were almost too successful to ignore.
Because they sold tens of millions of records.
Right, but the critics always deemed them just a bit too uncool to fully celebrate.
They were constantly overshadowed by the colossal cultural weight of the 1960s band that came before.
It's the ultimate comparison trap. You can't easily compete with your own legacy.
Well, no, you can't. But you also have to remember how concrete the narrative was back then. John Lennon was always painted as the tortured genius, the intellectual heavyweight of the group.
While Paul got completely pigeonholed.
Exactly. The 70s rock critics painted him as this pop lightweight, just a guy writing silly love songs and dragging his wife around the globe on tour.
It was such a reductive characterization.
It stuck around for decades, though.
Which is absolutely wild when you look at the actual scoreboard. We are talking about an absolute commercial juggernaut.
They dominated the radio globally.
Between 1970 and 1981, they racked up 7 top 10 hits. You have massive tracks like Listen to What the Man Said.
With a little luck.
And, of course, the absolute monster hit, Silly Love Songs.
Which is so iconic because it was his direct response to those exact critics. They mocked him, so he turned the insult into a global #1 hit.
Best revenge possible. But they weren't just a singles band. They were moving millions of albums and practically pioneering the modern stadium rock tour.
They were playing the exact same massive venues the original 4 would have played if they had stayed together.
And that's why this curation in Cleveland matters so much. It is the very first major museum exhibition dedicated exclusively to that specific 10-year journey.
It shifts the entire cultural conversation from him being simply an ex-band member to being a genuine band leader in his own right.
It's giving them the institutional respect they earned but barely got back in the day.
And the timing is perfectly strategic.
Because of the documentary.
Yes. Morgan Neville directed a new film called Man on the Run. It drops on Amazon Prime on February 27th.
Which is going to be required viewing for anyone heading to the museum.
It focuses entirely on the band's ascent in the 70s. It sets the exact emotional context you need before walking into that hall in Cleveland.
Because if you weren't alive back then, or if you only know those glossy radio hits we just mentioned, you probably have no idea how close this whole thing came to a total disaster.
Disaster is putting it mildly. The entire story of Wings is fundamentally a story of survival.
We have to talk about Lagos.
We absolutely must. Lagos is the crucible. That is where the actual reconstruction of his entire artistic identity happened.
Okay, let's set the scene for you. The year is 1973. Wings has put out 3 albums so far, including Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway.
And the critical reception was brutal.
Incredibly rough. The man who wrote Yesterday is getting universally panned.
The music press was basically sharpening their knives, openly asking if he had completely lost his touch.
The pressure must have been existential. He didn't just need a decent single. He needed a masterpiece to prove to the world he wasn't washed up at 31.
No, he decides he needs a radical change of scenery. He asks the record label for a list of their studios worldwide.
Scans the list and points to Lagos, Nigeria.
On paper, you can see the appeal. Go to Africa, soak up a new musical culture, find a fresh rhythm. Plus, recording overseas had some obvious tax advantages.
But the reality on the ground was basically a nightmare scenario.
It started falling apart before they even packed their bags.
Literally days before the flight, the band implodes.
Henry McCullough, their lead guitarist, just up and quits.
And then the night before they're supposed to leave,
Denny Seiwell, the drummer, walks out too.
can you imagine the sheer panic? You have expensive studio time booked on another continent, your entire reputation is on the line, and you suddenly have no rhythm section.
Most normal musicians would cancel the trip, regroup, hire session guys,
But he just said, forget it, we are going anyway.
leaving them with just a skeleton crew, Paul, his wife Linda, and Denny Lean.
So they land in Nigeria, probably expecting some tropical paradise. Instead, it is the peak of the rainy season.
Insanely hot and humid.
And the studio itself was barely functional, right?
Barely is generous. It was a studio in name only. The recording desk was completely antiquated. There was no acoustic baffling whatsoever.
And huge spiders.
Spiders the size of dinner plates walking across the floor. The tape machines were constantly malfunctioning because of the extreme humidity.
And then we get to the defining moment of the chaos. The night the whole project almost completely died.
Against all local advice to stay inside after dark, Paul and Linda decide to go for a walk.
The atmosphere of the city was already incredibly tense. It was under strict military rule.
A car slows down right next to them. 5 men jump out.
And suddenly, one of the most famous musicians on earth is face down in the dirt with a knife to his throat.
It is terrifying, and the wildest irony is the muggers had absolutely no idea who he was.
They didn't want autographs.
They wanted valuables. They took the cash, the cameras,
And they took the bag.
the bag containing the only existing demo tapes, the cassettes with all the new melodies.
And the notebooks. Every single handwritten lyric, every chord progression, every arrangement idea for the new record. Gone. Stolen in the dark.
Imagine the psychological toll of that. You are already missing half your band. The studio equipment is melting,
You're dealing with local political tension.
and now your life's work is gone. He had to reconstruct the entire Band on the Run album entirely from memory.
That specific reconstruction is a massive focus of this new exhibit.
Because it wasn't just about trying to remember a few pop songs, it was a sheer display of stubborn force of will.
You mentioned the local tension earlier. That involved Fela Kuti, didn't it?
Yes, Fela Kuti was a massive musical legend in his own right. But he publicly accused them of coming to Nigeria to exploit African music.
Accusations of cultural appropriation, decades before that was even a common phrase.
Exactly. The situation got so incredibly heated that Paul actually had to invite Fela to the studio. He played him the raw, unfinished tracks just to prove they weren't stealing Afrobeat rhythms.
Just an absolute pressure cooker. Most bands would have surrendered.
But this is where the sheer musical genius takes over, because remember, they have no drummer.
No lead guitarist either.
So Paul steps up and plays almost everything himself.
Which the exhibit really highlights. This masterpiece literally forged out of chaos.
He sat down behind the drum kit, and people often forget this, but he is a deeply distinctive drummer. He has this very stiff, driving, specific feel.
He played the drums, the piano, the lead guitars.
And of course, he played the bass.
Just overdubbing every single part himself, layer by painstaking layer.
Building a massive wall of sound completely alone. When you listen to Band on the Run today, knowing that he is playing the drums and the bass and the rhythm guitar, it fundamentally changes how you process the music.
You aren't hearing a band jamming in a room.
You are hearing one man's brain constructing an entire symphony track by track.
And the end result. Band on the Run becomes a triple platinum smash. It wins a Grammy.
It instantly silences every single critic who dared to say his career was over.
It is the ultimate survival story. And visitors in Cleveland will get to see the actual artifacts from those exact sessions.
You get to stand in front of the physical instruments that built that iconic sound. The exhibit frames the album not just as a collection of hits, but as a monument to absolute stubbornness.
Now, you really can't talk about his survival in the 70s without talking about the person who was standing right there beside him through the muggings and the malfunctioning studios.
We need to talk about Linda.
Yes, we do.
Because this is perhaps the single most important historical correction the exhibit and the documentary are making. Justice for Linda is so incredibly overdue.
Because the narrative surrounding her back then was, well, unkind is an understatement.
It was wildly sexist and incredibly lazy. The running joke in the press was always that she was just the wife lingering in the band.
That she was pure deadweight.
Or that she was only on stage because he needed her there to keep an eye on him. They acted like she contributed absolutely zero musical value.
I remember the cruel jokes about her keyboard playing.
Which were completely unfounded if you actually dive into the records. And this is where the new historical evidence is so powerful.
The documentary sheds light on this, right?
Yes, Men on the Run features actual studio footage showing her actively shaping major creative decisions.
Give us an example of what we'll see.
There is this brilliant, specific scene where Paul is really struggling to nail down the vocal arrangements for the title track, Band on the Run. It just isn't sitting right in the mix.
And she steps in.
She completely steps in. She suggests a totally different approach. She actually demonstrates a vocal line for him. He listens, accepts it, and they build the final track upon her idea.
Wow. So she was never just a passenger on this ride.
Not for a single second. Musically, we also have to credit her for the entire sonic texture of the band. She is the one who introduced the Mini-Moog synthesizer to their sound.
And that heavy synth sound on tracks like Jet.
Or later on, with a little luck.
Yeah.
That isn't Paul playing. That is her providing that thick, synthesized foundation. She had a very specific, almost punk rock sensibility because she wasn't traditionally trained.
She played entirely by ear.
Which made the band sound wonderfully different from all those overly polished session groups of the era.
And we have to mention the harmonies.
The harmonies are the secret weapon. That incredibly specific, wide vocal sound they had, that is purely her voice blending with his.
That's a texture you just can't replicate with professional session singers.
Because her voice possessed this unique, raw, untrained quality, it was authentic.
And the exhibit goes out of its way to validate all of this.
It does. They are proudly displaying her original keyboards, her handwritten vocal arrangements. They used the physical artifacts to cement her role as a fully legitimate collaborator. She was a true co-pilot.
I think that is going to blow the minds of a lot of casual fans who just bought into the old late-night jokes.
It changes the whole perspective.
Now, speaking of the exhibit itself, what is the actual physical experience going to be like? You mentioned the instruments.
It is an unbelievably impressive haul. The curators say it is the absolute most extensive collection of items from his personal archives ever made accessible to the public.
So we are talking about the Holy Grail items.
Oh, without a doubt. We are talking about the iconic Rickenbacker bass, the vintage acoustic guitars, the synths.
What about the visual stuff?
The visual evolution is a wild ride all on its own. They have the actual stage clothing.
From the mullet years all the way through the sequin years.
Lots of satin, lots of incredibly wide lapels. But beyond the fashion, they have original album artwork, tour memorabilia, and most importantly, the handwritten lyrics.
There is nothing better than seeing original handwritten lyrics.
There is something so intensely intimate about seeing the scratch-outs, the mistakes, the little doodles in the margins.
It pulls back the curtain on the craft.
Exactly. It reminds you that these massive cultural anthems didn't just magically appear out of thin air. A human being sat down with a cheap pen and wrestled them onto a piece of paper.
Especially knowing that some of those exact pages were frantically rewritten from memory after the originals vanished in Nigeria.
It gives those pages so much more weight.
But the curators have been emphasizing that this isn't going to be just a bunch of old guitars behind glass, right?
That is a crucial point. Rock history shouldn't feel like a quiet, dusty library where you have to whisper. It is supposed to be loud.
Sweaty and loud.
The whole space is designed to be deeply immersive. They are layering archival video and audio over everything to make the history feel completely alive.
So there is sound everywhere.
Everywhere. While you are staring at the actual drum kit from the Lego sessions, you might be hearing the raw, isolated audio track of him working out that specific rhythm.
Oh, that is brilliant.
You watch the grainy footage of the arrangements being built in real time while standing inches away from the tools they used to build them.
It sounds like they're really trying to capture that feeling of chaos we talked about earlier.
They want it to feel dangerous and thrilling, not just some sanitized nostalgia trip. You are supposed to feel the brutal heat of that studio.
Which naturally brings us to the biggest question of all. Why now? Why are we suddenly getting this massive multimedia reassessment of this specific era in 2026?
It is fascinating to trace the timeline, because this certainly didn't happen overnight. It has been a very slow burn.
The critical consensus has definitely shifted over the years.
Think back to the year 2001. We had the Wingspan documentary. That was arguably the very first real attempt to rehabilitate the brand.
Just a gentle reminder to the public, like, hey, remember how many hits these guys actually had?
Exactly. Then you jump forward a couple of decades to the McCartney 3-2-1 series with Rick Rubin. That project dug so deeply into the sheer craft of the songwriting.
It made everyone realize just how incredible his bass playing always was.
And then, of course, the massive impact of the Get Back documentary. Watching his creative process unfold in real time completely changed how people view his work ethic.
And now we arrive at Man on the Run and this massive Cleveland exhibition.
The critical lens has finally completely caught up to the objective reality. For the longest time, the 1970s were judged through this very narrow filter of what was considered cool.
And let's be honest, they weren't cool in the way Led Zeppelin or David Bowie were cool.
They were proudly pop, they were domestic, they sang about love and family.
But the objective reality is that the music holds up flawlessly.
The music is undeniably fantastic. The musicianship was incredibly tight. The song structures were massively sophisticated. They didn't somehow become a great band retroactively.
They were always great.
It just took the broader culture 50 years to stop comparing them to Sgt. Pepper and finally appreciate them for exactly what they were.
A serious, dedicated, creative enterprise. Not just a rich guy's vanity project.
You absolutely do not tour the globe and sell that many millions of records on vanity alone. He fought tooth and nail for this.
He had something to prove.
He had to prove he could still conquer the world without John, George, and Ringo standing next to him. And this brand new exhibit is the definitive proof that he won that fight.
You know, thinking about him in Legos, sweating through his shirt, sitting down with the drum kit because his band abandoned him, and just absolutely refusing to surrender, that is the image that is going to stick with me.
It is the dictionary definition of artistic resilience. It is remarkably easy to be a genius when everyone in the world is cheering for you.
It is vastly harder to be a genius when the entire industry is telling you that you're a washed-up has-been.
And when you walk through those doors in Cleveland, that exact feeling of defiance is the story you are going to experience.
Well, I certainly know where I'm going to be spending May 15th.
A road trip to Ohio is definitely in order for both of us.
It is going to be an absolute pilgrimage.
And an incredibly loud one.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Whenever you feel like knowing more about the Beatles, visit us at BeatlesRewind.com. It's the Beatles, all day, every day, 8 days a week. Cass, we'll do it again tomorrow.
Right. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Have a great day, everyone.
Until next time. When you listen,
your mind conducts its own symphony.